The Walther P99, let's check it out. P99 makes you want to party like it's 1999. The Walther P99 was introduced in 1996 and actually began distribution in 1997. This has been a favorite pistol of mine for a long time. Not only the ergonomics, but just the look of the pistol. I mean, it is a beautiful pistol in my opinion. Now this is the early Gen 1, so I want to just kind of mention that before we get started. I will point out some of the differences of the current production pistols. First thing we need to do is make sure the gun is unloaded, so we're going to drop the magazine. We're going to check to make sure the gun is unloaded. This is not my first review of this pistol. I did one about 7 years ago and the quality is horrible, so I just wanted to kind of bring this back to the front. These are still under production with Walther, regardless of the PPQ, which is their current 9mm that a lot of people are using. But a lot of police and military units are using the P99, and for a lot of good reasons. One of the things about this pistol particularly, this is a really good friend of mine that let me borrow this, and for the first review for that matter. And I've always loved these guns, and I'm not really sure why I don't have one in my collection, but I'll be getting to that hopefully soon. One of the big things though that kept me from buying one of these originally was when the assault weapons ban went into effect, there were only 10-round magazines available for the Walther P99, and because of that I chose the Glock 19 instead and have gone forward ever since. To me, the shootability of this pistol is just excellent. Now the first thing we're going to do is make sure the gun is unloaded. Well, we have 15-round magazines, and we're going to drop that and check the chamber, and the gun is unloaded. They are both steel magazines with polymer bases. Now one of the big things about this pistol that differentiates itself over most of your polymer striker fire pistols is that it is what they call the AS. In fact, the name of the pistol is the Walther P99 AS, which stands for anti-stress trigger. Now once the slide has been racked, the striker is in a pre-cock position. And so what we have here is with the first pull of the trigger is we have some take up right here, and you hear that little click, and it's a very smooth take up. But now we're ready for single action, and so there's a little take up here and then a nice very crisp snap. Now we're going to check reset, because reset is one of the phenomenal things about this pistol. It's right there. I mean, it is probably the closest reset. In fact, they said it's 1mm. That's going to allow for you to get really fast follow-up shots. Now every time the slide returns, it's in a single action mode, but then every time after that the gun is in single action, so it's a really quick trigger pull, and the trigger is pulled back, so it makes it really very fast. Once we pull the trigger on an empty chamber, we're in double action, and that is a longer trigger pull like this. So the gun is always operable. It's not that once you pull the trigger, even on a dead round, you're going to be able to have second strike capability, which to me is a great feature to have. Okay, we're going to rack the slide, and now we're back into the pre-cock position. And of course we have that first take up again, and now we're in single action. And this is going to stay in single action every time the slide is returned. But let's say we are finished shooting, we're in single action, and we want to reholster our pistol and make it safe. Right up at the top here is a decocker. Once we hit the decocker, it returns the trigger into a double action mode. And so the double action again, it's very heavy pull through, and then you fire that first round. So that's some of the safety features of the pistol. So here in double action mode, you'll see that the striker comes back and then it fires. Once we rack the slide and it's in the AS configuration or the anti-stress mode, it's pre-cocked, as you can see. And we have that trigger pull and then the nice crisp snap. After that, it's just complete pulling of the trigger again. So this will be your loaded striker indicator when you see that little light there, but that does not mean the gun is loaded or unloaded. Okay. Now let's look at the loaded chamber indicator. We're going to put a dummy round in, and before we rack the slide, I want you to notice the long extractor, and just right here you don't see anything, but once you enter a round you have a red mark right here to let you know that the gun is loaded. One of the things about that is you'll not be able to really tell that in the dark, except that it's going to be recessed just a little bit. And then once the round is ejected, it disappears. Now we're going to check the single action trigger pull with a Lyman trigger gauge. 5 pounds, 6.5 ounces. So the trigger pull on the single action is about 5.5 pounds. I did it 3 times, but just for time's sake, we're just going to show the one. Double action trigger pull, 9 pounds, 1 ounce. It came up 9 pounds, 2.5 ounces twice, so we're getting just over the 9 pound mark. The frame of the pistol is a glass reinforced polymer, so it's a very smooth finish. The slide itself, of course, is steel. It has a really nice tinifer finish on here, what the Glock used to use, and this is an excellent finish that is similar to stainless steel as far as corrosion resistance. In fact, in salt water it's 99% corrosion resistant. So this is a great pistol, obviously, for harsh conditions. You have your paddle mag release, and of course, honestly, the more I use that, the more I like it. But these are, with the Gen 1, it's a shorter paddle. With the Gen 2, it comes out just a little bit. So if you're buying a current P99, it's going to have a longer magazine paddle release. We have the slide serrations that are really low on the slide, but on the Gen 2s, the serrations are wider and they come all the way up. So that's just a couple of differences. Also, this little trigger, little hump right here inside the trigger guard is removed, and in the Gen 2, and then also the trigger guard kind of rounds out on the Gen 2. Another difference is this has a proprietary rail that goes in the front. You can see it's just 2 slots. With the new version, there is a slot that goes across the bottom, but it is not true 1913 Picatinny. So there's going to be some issues with certain lights and lasers that you might put on here. The slide has a nice cut at the front, so even though it doesn't have serrations, you can grab it here for press checks, but it is a little slow, just not really aggressive, and so, you know, having those slide serrations would probably improve that quite a bit. This is in the OD frame. It also comes in a tan color, and it comes, of course, in the black. And then you can get a slide that has a titanium color finish on here as well. So there are a number of different color choices, but the back straps are always in black, and there are 3 back strap choices. There's a roll pin right here that's a little more difficult than your typical changing out of your back strap, but it's right here at the bottom, but it's not really that bad. We have some little pyramids that are little dots, really, more than anything, right here, and then we have a recessed area, and then these grooves at the front. I'll say that the gun is super ergonomic as far as in the hand. It really fits well, very similar to the P22. In fact, the P22 is inspired by this grip, but it's one of the most ergonomic grips on the market, in my opinion. One of the things, though, it is somewhat slick, but that has to do a lot with the glass reinforced polymer, but it's still, because of the way this thing is shaped, it still fits in the hand very well. The base plate of the magazine comes out just a little bit, so it makes it easy if you need to really rip those magazines out. Now, it does come with a set of 3-dot sights, and the rear is adjustable. I think this one may have been replaced with some night sights, but anyway, you get the 3-dot sight, which is very visible. Also, it does come with 3 interchangeable front sights. So for specific loads or things like that, you can change out that front sight pretty easily. One thing I want to note is the rear sight had a little bit of movement to it, and I didn't notice it until I got to my tabletop, so that could affect accuracy. Now here we have the Walther PPQ, and really as far as the silhouette, everything is actually identical in length, in the grip length, slide length, everything. The big difference between these two pistols really is the slide. The slide on the PPQ is more rounded off. There are no cuts. With the P99 you can see that they have these beveled edges right here, and then of course at the front you just have this cocking shelf right here more than anything. With the front slide serrations on the PPQ in the rear, here you can see at the top, especially at the front, how it narrows out. It stays the same width all the way through. The PPQ is a single action striker fire pistol. It does not have the decocker. It is not the anti-stress trigger. This has a much more simple trigger action. But the original Canik TP9 V2 is very similar to the Walther P99. And one of the big things, of course, is that it has a decocker, but it is on both sides. The V2 has the preset trigger, so you have that same kind of action, and then you have double action right there. It's really pretty much the same trigger system as the Walther, just with an extra decocker position right here. Of course, the decocker on the TP9 series was very controversial, especially with the single action striker fire pistols. But with the double action mode, I think that the decocker is fine. I have no problems. In fact, I really like the Canik PT9 V2 because you have that second strike capability. And of course, the big difference is you have a standard mag release here, and then you have the paddle design on the P99. And I want to thank Freedom Munitions for sponsoring the ammo. We're using the standard remanufactured Freedom Munitions in the 115 grain and Pro Match new manufactured in 135 grain XAP round. And you get a 5% discount using SUCH00 when you check out on the Freedom Munitions website. Now I've had a lot of experience with this particular P99. This is a good friend of mine who let me borrow it. In fact, the first review that I did on the P99 was using this pistol. So I knew what to expect as far as shooting. It's a very smooth shooting pistol. Of course, the ergonomics add to that. I mean, you can wrap your hand around it and it feels really confident. Very similar to the P22, and that's where the P22 grip was inspired from, is the P99. It just has that really unique molded feel to it. One of the things I like about this pistol too is that it seems smaller than it is. It seems more compact and it's more pointable, and it seems like it has more of a natural balance to it. Now the trigger is one of those things that I really like. I mean, I love the smooth trigger, but on the other hand, it's almost too quick. You know, there's just that pre-cock if you have the striker engaged, but it's really nice. But buddy, when you're ready to fire, I mean, that thing is ready to go immediately. And in fact, when I was shooting my accuracy test, I would get here and it would sometimes go off before I was quite ready. And that has a lot to do with me just not being used to this pistol in the first place. But you know, you've got that decocker, which again, the decocker has that double action right here. And see, there's no trigger safety on here, so really the double action is important. And then a nice crisp snap. But that little single action, it is crisp and it is nice. To demonstrate the decocker, we have 4 rounds. And so I'm going to fire off 2 rounds. Now let's say I want to put the gun away, but I want to make sure it's safe. I'm going to press this decocker right here. You hear the snap. With the decocker engaged, now we have double action. So this is a lot longer trigger pull. But the next shot is single action. With that, you don't have to worry about second strike capability because you have it with this pistol. So shooting both the 115 grain Freedom Munitions 9mm and their 135 grain Pro Match, you know, it just handled very well. The recoil is very mild on it. It just handles nice. This is really a great gun. For me, I would definitely feel like this is a good concealed carry option just because of the size and the balance. But with Walther quality, you know, it's hard to go wrong. And I want to thank ShootSteel.com for providing the music. They do offer a 10% SUCH00 discount on their website, so check them out. Disassembly of the pistol. We're going to remove the magazine, double check to make sure the gun is unloaded. You have to first pull the trigger, pull back the slide just a little bit, and take these tabs on either side and release them, and the slide comes right off. We have a guide rod, and this is a polymer guide rod with a flat spring. We have our Browning lengthless design barrel, and then inside the frame we have our typical striker fire pistol setup, of course with the extra added decocker and the AS trigger. And that's all you need to do to field strip the pistol. Just return your barrel for reassembly, recoil spring and guide rod. Just bring it over. Now, as far as price goes, these typically run between $525 and $575 if you can find them. The 9mm are in high demand. So a lot of times you can find the 40 caliber for a little less, and typically the compact model, which holds 10 rounds, you can find those for about the $500 range. Walther factory 15 round magazines typically run around the $35 range, somewhere in there. In fact, I saw some at gunmagwarehouse.com. They were $34.99. Pros and cons of the pistol. The trigger options are a pro. I mean, there's a lot of different things. If you're really concerned about carrying this, there's no trigger shoe here, so having that double action trigger pull is a great safety feature for this pistol. Also, just the quality of the Walther pistols are just top notch, and these have been around again since 1996, and they have really proven themselves with a lot of military, police, and civilians. The super quick reset of the trigger. The ergonomics, to me, are some of the best on the market. And the paddle designs, if you like paddles, and that's really the only option, would be a pro, and that would also be a con for those who really prefer the frame-mounted mag release. Another con would be that it's not a consistent trigger pull every time like it is with most of your striker fire pistols. The rail, of course, with this one, is definitely a con, but even with the one with the slot, it's limited to different lights and lasers that you can put on there. The grip itself, even though it's very ergonomic and it has a lot of texturing, it's still slick. I mean, it is pretty slick. For me personally, I would put some Talon grips, very much like I did with the PPQ. I put Talon grips on it because it had the same issue. It was just fairly slick. But otherwise, and of course those are not deal breakers, and they're just different preferences, but just some things to think about if you're considering this pistol. And I want to thank my good buddy Johnny C for letting me borrow this pistol for the test and evaluation, and I think that I'm now going to be in the market for a P99 because this was a joy to shoot at the range. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America, long live the Republic. But I will be remedying that. I'll be getting to that hopefully soon. One thing I want to show you is we're going to cock the. Okay. Now, one thing I want to show you is we're going to cock, and so there's not a lot of that with the decocker and. The Walther P99 is one of the most ergonomic. The Walther P99 is just one of those. I don't know what I want to say about this. And he's had this pistol for probably 20 years. Reassembly is in reverse order.